Jim, if you'd unmute yourself, please, sir.
My name's Jim, and I'm an alcoholic. And it is indeed a privilege to be here and address this gallery of people from all over, if not all over the planet, at least all over the United States, for sure. This is the 6th meeting today. I am absolutely a believer that God does for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And when the pandemic hit us, Zoom showed up. I don't know that I would have drank if Zoom hadn't the show. I don't think I would have. There were a lot of people that would have been lost if they hadn't had the ability to sit down in a chair and talk to all these little old Hollywood squares, to share a journey. So God has been there every time I have needed him. It wasn't always the case. Because whenever I took my last drink, I didn't believe in God. I didn't come here out of virtue. I came here because my wife forced me to call AA for the second time. First time, 1968. 6 months sober, not doing anything. Moved my family. Bowling alley one night, beer bottle walked by, and whenever the lady came back by, I said, cunning, baffling, and powerful, said, bring me one of those. And it was 3 years before I could get to my last drink again. Like I said, it wasn't virtue. I didn't want to stop drinking. I just wanted to stay out of jail. And that's where my wife promised me that I was going if I didn't call AA, because she said, you tried to kill me last night. And I intend to call the law if you don't do something about your drinking. That will get your attention. You will not ignore it. If you do, you do so at your own peril. And she was serious and meant it, and I knew that she meant it. So I picked up the phone and called AA. That was July the 25th, 1971. I have been continuously sober since, and it has been an incredible journey. Absolutely amazing. When men like Stephen Todd show up in my life, God puts people there for a reason, for a season, to share the journey with us for a while, because we probably are going to need each other at some point, and God's got a plan. I didn't get here without help. I'd like to introduce you to the two men that have preceded me to the cemetery. In the background behind this here, in that blue shirt, is a man named Johnny Johnson. He always used his last name, so I use it without hesitation. He was the man that showed up at 2 p.m., called me about 11 o'clock and said, hey, I'm in church. I'll be out here. He said, okay, if we come by about 2. And he had brought a guy named Jesse H. with him. I didn't have any keys. I didn't have any wallet. I didn't have any money. I didn't have I couldn't even go to the Navy ship that I worked on a half mile down the road unless something changed. So I wasn't really too interested in what he had to say. Where's the car keys? Where's the money? You know what happened? I had no idea what happened last night. After he talked for about an hour, Jesse never said much, and he didn't say much that day. After he talked about an hour, Johnny said, there's a meeting at 8 o'clock tonight. Would you like to go? And while I'm trying to think of an excuse, my wife, in a very loud and firm voice, said he would love to go. And that started my journey in sobriety. Johnny Johnson dragged me around to the state convention in Virginia over in Newport News. And about that first month, he dragged me to a retreat in Blacksburg. He took me to meetings, met me at meetings. He talked to me a lot about God. My father was a Church of Christ minister. He preached hellfire and damnation 3 times every Sunday at 3 different little communities around Batesville, Arkansas. Bethesda, 9 o'clock in the morning, Cushman, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and 3 miles north of Cushman, Mount Pleasant at 3. Same sermon, word for word, same sermon. I never once sat in the Church of Christ, sat in church and felt the presence of God, but my father never knew that I didn't believe in God. So here I am on the 25th of July, 1971. I've taken my last drink, but I don't know it. I don't believe in God. But God did something that day that I was completely and totally unaware of, but became acutely aware of in the future. He opened up the gates of hell and let me out. When we read how it works, that last paragraph right before we get to the parenthetical Alpha, Bravo, Charlie extensions, there's a sentence there that says this: our description of the alcoholic. The chapter to the agnostic, and I'm gonna put my first drink in between and our, okay, because that's where it started. Personal adventures before. Now I'm going to put another drink as a bookend to that. 4 words that describe the years of hell that I endured with alcohol as my constant thought. I joined the United States Navy when I was about a month before my 18th birthday. The United States Navy dragged me through 29 countries, and I got drunk in every one of them. But when I came here, when I went with Johnny and Jesse to that meeting that evening, it was a speaker's meeting. I don't remember. It was a lady speaking, but I have no idea what was said. I'm sitting there thinking, Jim, I don't think I'm an alcoholic, but there's something wrong with me, and maybe they'll let me stay until I can figure it out. Well, God had already figured it out. He knew I was an alcoholic. It took me some time. And when God opens up that gates of hell and lets us out, guess what? There's 12 steps to hallelujah. And that's what my life is today. Hallelujah. I enjoy life. I have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, wrote the book. I have enjoyed the best of the best in sobriety. I endured a hellish existence. Our personal adventures before includes dishonesty, stealing, losing a home, my family living in a car, loss of money, bankruptcy. I wake up and I look at the back of the head that's laying next to me in a motel, and I go, the heck is that? 4 words, right? Who are you? And where did we meet each other? And how long have we been here? And whose car did we drive here? Because if we didn't drive in mine, I'm in trouble because I don't know where mine is. My sponsor said, Jim, you know what? Alcohol does something to you that it does to a lot of us. I said, what's that, Johnny? He said, it makes your clothes fall off away from home. I said, yeah, that's true. They fell off in 29 countries. when I took my last drink, Johnny Johnson started talking to me about God. He started talking to me about getting a sponsor. He started talking to me about reading the big book, about going to meetings and sharing. And you know, what I hear will not change what I believe. I didn't believe in God. What I read will not change what I believe, but what I see will absolutely change what I believe. So for 4 years, after I took my last drink, God was at work in my life. The Navy took me different places and took me to Massachusetts and the West Coast and back, and I didn't drink. But it was a difficult journey. And Johnny Johnson was a religious man, and he was very patient with me. And I probably need to ask Stephen how long he expects me to talk. This may have a limit on it. I may have already exceeded it.
45, 50 minutes total.
Oh, okay. Then I can get part of my story in. Okay. Johnny Johnson kept going, Jim, you need a sponsor. I said, I was looking for a sponsor. Heck, I didn't want anybody telling me what to do. I had all the answers. My resources could fix everything that had come to me. I went to the Mediterranean, met Father Martin in Athens, Greece, little 2-day conference, and came back. And I married a woman 2 weeks after I met her. I stayed drunk for 2 weeks. I don't even remember asking her to marry me. And 3 years later, I found out she's not who she said she was. That she's married to some guy who's in prison in Arkansas, that she's got a kid in Arkansas. She told me she didn't have a family. She was, had changed her name, birth certificate, driver's license. She was looking for a sanctuary because the man she used to work for was looking to kill her after he got out of prison when she put him there for testifying against him. She had been a prostitute. About the same time, I found out she was having an affair with my brother. We went through marital counseling. I don't know why. I should have just gotten a divorce, but I'm at this point codependent. I am sickly codependent. And I can't, there's no way I can go off and leave her. So we start trying to fix it. We go to counseling, and a counselor asked me one time, Jim, what would she have to do to get you to leave? I didn't have an answer. He said, next week when you come in, I'd like for you to have an answer. The following week, I didn't. But in 1974, May, I came back early from the Mediterranean to an empty house. But I mean, the children were there, but she wasn't. She was gone all night, every night, coming in drunk. And I looked underneath the kitchen sink, and there was a gallon jug with about half a gallon of vodka in it. And I began to throw a pity party. I don't take a drink, but I go upstairs and I lay down on the bed, and the tears are rolling. And God does for us what we can't do for ourselves, and he intervenes in our journey when he's got something that he wants us to do. And that afternoon, as I laid there crying, phone rang. It was a lady named Sybil H. I had never talked to her on the telephone. She called and said, I haven't seen you in a long time, Jim. I said, I've been overseas 7 months, just got home. How are you doing? I'm not doing good. Thinking about taking a drink. She said, whoa, what's going on? I explained. She said, you need to get out of there. I said, I got no place to go. My ship won't be back for 10 days. She said, I'll call you back. In about 10 minutes, she called me back and she said, call Red B down at the intergroup. Red got one of his sponsees to agree to let me stay with him. When my wife came home that night, I said, I'm leaving. I'm not coming back. And the answer at that point to the counselor would have been this: what would she have to do to get you to leave? Threaten my sobriety. And I walked out and I never went back. So on July the 9th, 1974, I'm in Navy instructor training for a 4-year billet. I had gotten a call from my wife about a week before, and she said, Jim, I got drunk last night, laid down underneath the sun, let my eyes roll open, I burnt myself blind. I can't see. I said, Marty, there ain't nothing I can do for you. If I don't finish this training, I'm going back to sea probably. She said, they're going to take these wraps off on the 9th of July, which would have been a Friday afternoon. I have a 2 o'clock appointment. At 2:20 on July the 9th, 1975. I'm sweating bullets. I know that if she's blind, I'm going to have to go home, help take care of the kids. And I know that I cannot stay with her and stay sober. And by then I had a bunch of friends in the program. I'd been going to meetings. Johnny Johnson he didn't quit on me. He was a religious man, but he never quit. But I don't have a relationship with God. 4 years. But that day, at 2:20 in the afternoon, I remember the time because it just was like lightning. At 2:20 in the afternoon, to a God that I didn't believe in, I got down on my knees and I put both hands up. And I said, God, please help me. You know, I've said prayers that God took 2 years to answer. And it took me 2 months after he answered it to realize that he had answered a prayer that took that long. And if this hadn't taken 2 weeks to get fixed, I wouldn't even have remembered that I had asked God to fix it. But at 2:30, 10 minutes after the request, the phone rang and the problem was solved. Jim, I can see. That was the end of the discussion. I got up off my knees all excited, called the man in the blue shirt and said, hey, I just had a conversation with God and he answered. What happened? I told him. He said, act like you mean it, because you're going to need God. And you know, from that day to this, God has fixed everything in my life. And on the days that I couldn't walk, God picked me up and carried me. I have a degree from the University of New York, Albany. It's an external degree. I have 205 college credits. A Bachelor of Science in Political Science. And every one of those credits came through taking examinations. Alcohol destroyed a military career. I joined the Navy in 1958. In 1964, I made E6. In 1979, I retired E6. Because every other page in my service jacket said reduced in rate, reinstated. Reduced in rate, reinstated. He's over the hill, he missed ship's movement. I had an evaluation one time and it was very succinct. It said, can't lead, won't follow, gets in the way. And it was accurate. That was true. You know, alcohol destroyed a military career. I got out in 1968 for 2 years. I lost 7 jobs in 2 years. I rejoined the military. I rejoined the Navy. They didn't put me on the West Coast for Vietnam. I went to Vietnam 3 times on a heavy cruiser. They kept me on the East Coast. I don't remember re-enlisting. I don't remember getting from Springfield to St. Louis. Somebody took me. I got on a plane that was supposed to be going to Philadelphia. I don't remember getting on the plane. And when I came to, I was in Baltimore. I used to do a lot of strange things in blackouts. I got drunk in one country one time and went into a blackout. And I came to in another country riding a horse. And I don't even like horses. So who knows what happens to us while we're in blackouts? So when we start to do this program, God's opened up the gates of hell and let me out. I finally admit, hey, I've got a problem. I'm an alcoholic. And on July the 9th at 2:30, I came to believe. And I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. And I was finally on my way in this program. I became one of the top instructors at the school that I taught. 5 straight evaluations of excellence. No instructor had ever had that. God put a retired lieutenant colonel across the street from me in the educational services office. That's the man that said, what test do you want to take today? And I wound up with that degree. When I retired in 1979, I became a combat system engineer at Dahlgren, Virginia. I've worked on nuclear Tomahawk cruise missiles. This man who couldn't find his way back to the ship and sometimes missed the ship could be trusted to work on one of these our nation's most powerful weapons. You see, I had become responsible, accountable, reliable. Alcoholics Anonymous had helped me to develop those characteristics, those qualities. I got involved in sports officiating, and you can't be late. One of the things I enjoy talking about is these close calls. And I just saw a miracle the other night in Kansas. I knew Kansas. I thought Kansas was going to win. But I used to officiate basketball, softball, baseball, football. I can remember the Virginia AAA baseball championship, and the men that were officiating were on that field because the coaches had requested them. And I had the mask behind the plate. And the significance of that didn't escape me. There was hundreds of men that could have been standing there in my shoes, but somebody had said, hey, we want him. And as I pulled the mask down, stepped out from behind a catcher and pointed at the pitcher and said, play ball. A tear rolled down my eyes, down my cheek. Of course, this alcoholic could have been in the cemetery. Johnny Johnson died on the 6th of November, 2013, the man in the blue shirt. After about 3 months of listening to me make up excuses about why I don't have a sponsor, he said, I'll be your temporary sponsor, Jim. And he was my temporary sponsor from that day until the day he drew his last breath. He always answered the phone. I think the reason that I'm just kind of speculating. I mean, we're going to speculate because I never asked him. I think he stayed temporary because he didn't really want to be dealing with somebody who was an atheist. And he was hoping at some point that I would find a sponsor and he could get rid of me, but he never was able to. A month after that 6th of November 2013, the man on the right there by the white hat, name's Arthur. Arthur Bancroft. But he knew, he was known all of his life as Czech. He's a United States Navy SEAL, had a powerful story. He set up the Marines alcohol, drug addiction programs at Quantico. Once heard him say, one man didn't take one drink one day, and a sea of lives were changed. I thought he was talking about Bill Wilson. He was talking about his life. And then when he talked about it, you realize that he had had that kind of an influence. And we are having that kind of an influence today, because this message extends around the world. At noon today, at 12:30, I was at an AA meeting in Moscow, Russia. And I just got goosebumps because God did that. And what is unique about that development in my life is I was sitting in a meeting when somebody asked questions about English speaking meetings around the world, and somebody volunteered, said, hey, there's an English speaking meeting in Russia. And we don't get political, we avoid controversy, but I'm going to share this because it is the very essence of what this program is about. I was sitting in a meeting in Kyiv, Ukraine. The Russian codes were given to me. I am blessed beyond my wildest dreams. I've been divorced twice. I divorced the lady, the first one. I met another lady, wasn't in the program, married her. We stayed married for 21 years. One day she said, I don't love you anymore. For the next 12 hours, I drove down to Westmoreland State Park, overlooked the Potomac River, and I had a conversation with God. God carried me through that day without taking a drink. The day I got a phone call that said, hey, your daughter was raped last night. Brutally raped. God carried me through that day, and I didn't take a drink. The day I got the phone call that said, you better sit down. I thought my uncle was about to tell me something about my father. He said, your sister was murdered, then her husband killed himself. God carried me through that day. Yeah, I got the phone call that said, her seventh kid. I have a lot of kids. Only one of them's blood, maybe two. Her goddaughter sexually molested between her 6 and 9 years old. She's 17 now, and she just had a complete breakdown. God carried me. I have a daughter that shares, I have two daughters actually that share the morning meeting with me. The one I'm going to talk about now has got about 11 years of clean and sober. But I got a phone call from her on the 10th of September 2010. She was in jail. Been arrested for the production and distribution of methamphetamines within the federally restricted distance of 2 schools. She had 27 felony charges. Her 2 boys were gone. The state of Arkansas wouldn't let me see them, wouldn't let my son makes $300,000 a year as a doctor. Wouldn't let any of us see him because their theory was the apple didn't fall too far from the tree, and we don't know what the tree really is. That was the prayer that God answered, that I had said 2 years ago whenever my daughter was struggling and couldn't keep the electricity on and the kids were cold in the wintertime, no food and no hot water. I mean, and I found out about it and said, the next time that this happens, I'm going to help the Arkansas take the kids away, your kids away. Her sister stepped in, intervened, and helped take care of those kids. But here, 2 years later, those boys are gone, and they went to a Christian home where they got food, security, shelter, hot water, love. See, their mama loved them, but she couldn't stop using them. It was 2 months later, I'm driving down the highway, and I got to thinking about what was happening, what's going to happen to my grandsons. And I realized that God had answered the prayer. You know, there's a place in the book, in the 12 and 12, that says that willingness is something that we have to have in order to be successful. But we have to generate it of our own volition. It's an act that a condition that we have to do all by ourselves. Nobody can help us with it. Over the course of my relationship with God, this is what I know. And I don't talk about what I believe. I don't talk about what I talk about what I know. I went from being a non-believer in God. And I tell people, I don't believe in God. I know there's a God. I have seen his work in hundreds of lives that were catastrophically destroyed, lives that have been restored. I know there's a God. I can't smell him. I can't feel him. I can't touch him. But I know he's there, and he walks through every moment of every day with me. I chatter with God all day long. Step 4, hard to do. 2 things are just almost too heavy for an alcoholic to pick up. That's a phone before you take a drink, and a pencil to start your 4th step. And I finally just got so tired of watching men drink themselves to death because they couldn't pick that pen up, that pencil up, and start the actions that would change their lives. See, this thing that sits on my shoulders is a septic tank. It is full of expletive deleted. And in order to get God to occupy this, I've got to clean it up. And the 4th step is where I do that. And the 5th step, you know, we say we're going to admit to God, to ourselves, and another human. God already knows. But if I'm not going to be honest, completely and totally honest, God won't participate in deception. And so I'm just blowing smoke up my sponsor's pant leg. And I'm deceiving myself. One of the things that I think that causes us old timers to lose our way and lose sobriety is the fact that we keep a secret. There's something that we did that we don't want anybody to know about. And as long as that secret is there, I'm chained to it, afraid that somebody will find out. I can do a lot of great work. I can do service. I can help people, give them rides. I can come to meetings. I can share in meetings. I can do everything, make coffee. I can do everything that's needed to be done, except make that 4th dimension. See, on page 25, it says, all that was left was for me to pick up the kit of spiritual tools that was laid at my feet, and and the next paragraph or so says something about being rocketed into the 4th dimension. I need to clean this septic tank out because God will not occupy a sewer, and I need God. Because it says God does for us what we cannot do for ourselves. We come to believe that. We accept that. So I can make what I call lift velocity. When they go to take off, they extend the flaps, and part of extending our spiritual flaps in Alcoholics Anonymous would be get a sponsor. Help others. Make 90 meetings in 90 days. I can make lift velocity in this program and maintain it for decades and decades and decades and have that little secret back there. Fear has got me chained to. I cannot make escape velocity that I need to be rocketed into a fourth dimension. I know that because I've experienced it. I kept a secret. I kept two secrets. I didn't want anybody to know about my sexual preferences, and I didn't know anybody to know that I'd killed a man drunk and I'd killed a man sober. And when I finally said that in an open meeting, I don't believe I said it. I think God got tired of waiting and said, hey, this is the message I want you to share tonight. And I shared two things. I've killed a man drunk, I've killed a man sober. I've done everything in sex except a deep knee bend over a fire hydrant. I've done men, women, beasts of the field. I've never touched a child. That chain that tied me to those events, that caused the fear to well up in my throat that somebody might find out, that chain got broken that night. And one of the things that I know is when I walk through the fear and step out into the unknown, one of two things will happen. God will either catch me or teach me to fly. And I've had lots of flying lessons. But in order to be rocketed, to make escape velocity, to where we're on cruise control, I'm going to need God's wind beneath my wings. So I just lost a friend. I've had 3 sponsors. I'm hoping that Bruce E's in this gallery. He's my current sponsor from Virginia Beach. I've had 3 sponsors. 2 of them are in the cemetery. They died so. Sponsorship for me is a till death do us part. And I say that's part of the conversation. This is not going to end any way except one of us dies. I think it's that kind of a commitment. I need to choose who I'm going to share the journey with. Actually, God chooses them, and He puts them in front of me. I spent 3 years looking for a replacement for Johnny Johnson because I knew he was going to die. He was 92 years old, and he was in bad health, and I knew he was going. And that's why there was a month between when he died and when I got Chick Bancroft. I had been interviewing people for 3 years. So all of a sudden, you lost the fear. And that's what, and that 4th step says, searching and fearless morally. If you've done the right thing with God, if you're able to turn it over to God and be rigorously honest, you're home free. You're going to have to make some amends. You have to ask God be willing to have God remove those defects of character. That's part of my prayer and conversation with Him every day. Then you're going to have to make some amends. I had a kid that almost wouldn't talk to me for 17 years. And I did so much in blackouts that I began to get concerned. I'm making living amends I'm working like a beaver, making meetings, helping people, doing good things for my family. I got a kid that won't talk to me. It's the one that's got 11 years clean and sober, the one that lost the grandkids, Kimberly. And I began to get suspicious that maybe I had done something that I didn't remember doing. I had 4 daughters by my first marriage. I went to each one of those girls, and with terrified, God gave me the courage to ask this question. When I was drinking, did I ever touch you inappropriately? And each of them said no. And what do you remember that has affected our relationship for these past 17 years? See, it isn't what I remember that I need to make amends for, it's what they remember. And if the transgression is serious enough, an old timer can do make that lift velocity and work and be really successful until they wake up one day and get a phone call saying your daughter that you molested as a child hung herself this morning. Living amends will not repair that kind of a damage. And I needed to know that what I needed to do, I don't know if I would have shot myself, fallen on a sword or something, if one of them had said, yes, you used to do that, come to my bed. I didn't. I was grateful, making amends, except when to do so would injure them or others. I have a great relationship with my children. My goddaughter, who was sexually molested, just left here yesterday. She's got 2 kids. What a wonderful, wonderful child. She calls me dad because didn't know who her dad was till she was 12. By then it was too late. I had the job. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory when we were wrong, promptly admit it. Every day I admit to somebody I use a tone of voice I shouldn't have used. I repair it as quickly as I can. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. I have sat on my lanai at 4 o'clock in the morning in an hour of prayer and meditation. And I could feel something in the universe that to me felt like God breathing. I get an intuitive thought, follow up on it. But I've never had God speak to me except out of these little squares here on this computer display. Every time you open your mouth, it sounds like God talking. And He appropriates our voices so that the message that He wants delivered gets delivered. I am convinced that God controlled every word that come out of the end of the pen that Bill W. wrote. You look at how many revisions there has been to the Bible. There's 4 here, but none of the words in the instructions on the front end have changed. On page 52, Bill's talking about longshoremen. Ask any longshoreman, about how much progress has been made, and I'll bet you they'll tell you that the man will go to the moon and come back, and it won't be long. So in 1969, I'm leaning on the back of my father's chair in Springfield, Missouri, and watching man step out onto the moon. But that paragraph was written in We Agnostics on page 52 in 1938. And Bill Wilson had no way of knowing. Only God could have known that. Like I said, I believe that Bill Wilson held the pen, but every word that came out of the end of it, God's. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics. Practice these principles in all of our affairs. I'm convinced that I treat meetings like this like meditation, because this is where I hear God's voice. This is where I hear God's message. This is where you tell me what I get to sit down and watch you when you first came here, trembling, shaking, your life destroyed, everything a mess. Some of you with scholarships from the legal. Some of you looking to, you know, they say our liver, our lover, our law. The law gets us here. It doesn't matter what gets us here, as long as we're able to stay. I'm going to try to wind this up. There's several things that I want to share. My father used to say, everybody knows how to ride the bucking horse but the fellow in the saddle. Johnny Johnson never once told me what to do. He did counsel me this. He said, Jim, if you ever hear me say, Jim, you need to, the only thing you need to do then, Jim, is ignore everything I say after that, because I don't have a clue what you need to do. And I've came to realize that willingness is the key to our success. With an ounce of willingness, this is what I've seen, with an ounce of willingness, I've seen people move a teaspoon of dirt and God flattened mountains that blocked their path. He restored their life. It's amazing. The power of God. When they say that when you're dancing with a 900-pound gorilla, that dance is not over until the gorilla says it is. That's not true. The dance is over. And you say, God, please dance with me. Please help me. Trust God, clean house, help others. I thank you for letting me speak. I hope I didn't I can't see the time. I got close to running completely over. Sorry, Stephen. Thank you for having me. And it's a blessing just to be here. Thank you.